Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to this early morning session on the theme Gustav Mahler, Heritage and Future. It's a great pleasure and honor to welcome you, Marina Mahler, as the granddaughter of Gustav Mahler on stage. Thank you very much that you found the way and that you share the podium with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
And it's my pleasure too to welcome Markus Rudolf Axt, Intendant of Bamberg Symphonica, at the same time host of the maybe most prestigious conductors competition in the meantime, the Gustav Mahler Conductors competition in Bamberg. You will give us an insight. Thank you for coming too. And Marina Mahler, you are the president of the competition. I'm representing Universal Edition, the company that ultimately won the undivided trust of Gustav Mahler. He entrusted his work to us, I'm quoting Gustav Mahler, for all time and all countries. And no wonder that this fills us with pride until today. But before we talk on the competition, before we talk on the newly founded Mahler Foundation from your side, before we talk on the necessity of using and providing orchestras with professionally edited material, I would like to start and shed some light on your personal life. You are the daughter of Anna Justine Mahler, the daughter of Gustav and Alma Mahler. She was born 1904 in Vienna, and she came when she was in her 80s to live with you in London, so you had a very close relation.
Yes, but she didn't come to live with me. She came to live in London, and I lived separately, but we had a very close relationship all the same.
Yes. So my first question is, what did she tell you about her father?
Well, I grew up from the age of 7 with her. It was just my mother and myself, and I was mostly in boarding school. But when we spoke, it was mostly about. It for us wasn't history. There were no photos of Mahler in the house. There was nothing, no vestige of Vienna, no vestige of the past. It was an empty house, and my mother was a sculptor, a stone sculptor. So it was a very concentrated life. But when she did say something, I mean, I remember most particularly about, she said the one thing that was amazing, that she was at the breakfast and lunch and dinner table, there was mostly silence because he was very concentrated. But she said when he did smile, it was like the sun coming out. It was something very special. And I thought that was very beautiful because you see very few smiling photos, only when he was in Amsterdam. You have this series, you know. But I grew up with a bookshelf with a lot of books, a piano, and I would say a very Spartan, concentrated existence. And my mother was the acting artist in the, making her work, starting at 7 in the morning before the sun was too hot. So my discovery of Mahler was really by myself later. Yeah.
There is the wonderful story when your mother did her first trip on a ship.
Oh, yes. That was
can you share the story? It tells a lot about the nature of Mahler.
Yes, it's wonderful. So she had a nanny, an English nanny who was very careful, and she ran to the edge of the ship and to see the first time she saw the sea. And the nanny said to her, don't get excited, don't get excited. And Mahler said, picked her up, swooped her up, held her over the sea and said, get excited, which is rather wonderful. But from then on, actually, she was terrified. She never learned to swim, so it had a...
So Mahler told your mother, get excited.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
Quite right. You know,
think
don't get excited. It's difficult to say to a child, a
Yes.
small child.
At the same time, it shows that Mahler wants to get us excited as well.
Well, excitement is part of life. You can't, especially with a small child. Yeah. It's very indicative, and it's a lovely story. I always loved it.
Yes. When did you become aware that your grandfather was simply a genius? And was it a burden for you or joy, or how did it become part of your life?
Well, because I was very lucky. I grew up in California, far from all of it. If I had perhaps grown up in Vienna, it would have been different. It would have surrounded me, and I might have felt claustrophobic or burdened and have to run. But as it was a very organic thing, that my mother already was an artist, and when Alma left California, we used to visit her, and sometimes I alone in New York when she moved to New York. It was never, because we didn't consider it history, it was part of our lives, there was never any focus on it. So my finding Mahler was much later, and my finding him as a grandfather and as a person came, strangely enough, not through music, but through literature, and this was Dostoevsky. So the brothers Karamazov was his favorite book. And growing up, there, as I said, in the house, there were no radio, no television, nothing. There was a bookshop. So I discovered Dostoevsky, and for me, my favorite was the Brothers Karamazov. So I only found out later that this was his favorite book, and it brought me in a crazy way so close to him that from then on, I felt bound. And when I first heard the music, it was like my blood in my veins. I felt so close. So close, you know, and also to the human being. And I suppose everything that I'm doing now towards and the Mahler Foundation is a way of, as he died when she was so young, is a way of reaching out to my grandfather. I would have wanted to meet him, and so it's my way of going towards him, to try to meet him, to try to know him in a human way, through the music, but also through the kind of nature that he had.
You take your responsibility as the president of the Gustav Mahler Conductors competition.
Yes, I take it very seriously, and also it is a wonderful competition. And I was there when we founded it with Ernest Fleischmann and Paul Müller from the orchestra at that time. I always think of it as 2003, and you've corrected me, it's 2004. Our first winner was, of course, Gustavo, but it is, first of all, a wonderful place. It's a wonderful orchestra. They're very generous with us. They give us their time. And all the young people who come, many of them, they are so happy to be there, because it's a little bit like a family also for the jury. It's a very intimate, very concentrated, and we all take it very seriously, because it is actually the future of music, not only Mahler, but other things. We take seriously the fact of new music, which is very important. It's part of Mahler, and wherever there has been a festival of Mahler, like the one in London with Abbado, which we started together, the Mahler Vienna in the 21st century, it was my idea after dinner one day to Claudio to say we must link through the Vienna School, but now what's happening today in music. And I think that's very important always when there are performances of Mahler, certainly festivals. You really can't do it without looking around what's happening today, because he had a hell of a time while he was beginning. You can't forget it.
Mr. Ax, the competition is widely considered one of the preeminent musical internationally contests. You're the host. Can you give us a short overlook on the history of the competition, and why did you put Mahler in the center?
With great pleasure. The competition has been founded in 2004, so 15 years ago from now. And next year we will already hold the 6th edition of the competition. And we started I think we were very lucky to have Gustavo Dudamel
Yeah.
during that first competition. There was a young Venezuelan boy, nobody knew him. He sent in a video which was not very professionally produced, but there was something in his conducting that everybody said, okay, we have to see this young guy. And nobody in the business knew about Venezuela, about El Sistema during that time. And he won because he showed a absolute great development during the competition in 2004, and he showed a big talent, and this was the starting point where this competition, the Mahler conducting competition, from its beginning was one of the most important ones. And since now we have about 500 applicants every edition, and this is really, it's one of the biggest as well, and Mahler has always been in the center of the competition. There's also a history with the orchestra and Gustav Mahler, which relates back to 1908 or even earlier. Bamberg Symphony has been founded in 1946, but comes from Prague. There was a German orchestra in Prague before the Second World War, in the German Opera House where Gustav Mahler conducted. And in 1908 he premiered his 7th Symphony with both opera orchestras, the one of the Czech Opera House, which is now Czech Philharmonic, and the one from the German Opera House, which is now Bamberg Symphony, more or less. So our players still have a little bit of Gustav Mahler's real genius in their DNA, and this is why we focus on Gustav Mahler in the competition.
You mentioned the first competition in 2004. Gustavo Dudamel almost didn't make it to the second round. You told me, which was new for me. And Marina, I want to ask you, how do you deal with this responsibility, and how is the selection process that you avoid to make really major mistakes?
Well, it's juries are a very fascinating thing altogether, and so are competitions, and very dangerous, because you have each person coming with his past and his imagined world of music, and each one looking for something other than the other person, and so forth. So when you have a group of people together, and then you have on very few of them was it unmistakable from the beginning who would be the first prize winner. And with the first competition, it was very divided. And so one had to fight for, as I did, for Gustavo, because there was something about him which communicated itself in a very strong way. It's emotive. Music is emotive, and even with the technical proficiency and whatever, in the end, it's who is communicating to the orchestra, and it's wonderful that the orchestra has a vote. And it's always very fascinating for me in the jury meetings to hear the representative from the orchestra, because they have such experience with many conductors, and to hear their reaction to how are they feeling about this young person in front of them, you know. And Gustavo was a very special thing. I just want to say that after he conducted the concert when he had won, then Ernest, who founded it with me and with Paul, he came up and he hugged me, and he had tears coming down his cheeks, because he said it's in a generation. So he was very moved. And that is something, we are all very moved when we hear a young person who has this gift and this future possible.
But you were very lucky with in the next years as well. It seems that
Yes.
all the big newcomers applied to your competition. Has this to do something with Mahler, because he is such a challenging composer?
Yes, yes.
I think so. Well, in the second edition was a bit tricky, and there was no first prize, because after Dudamel, everybody was like, oh, is there a new Gustavo Dudamel already 3 years later?
Very dangerous, yeah.
That was and I think it was wise not to give a first prize during that edition. Then in 2010, Einas Rubikis won, who's now music director at the Komische Oper in Berlin. Then Lahav Shani, of course.
That was very special. And that year was particularly an amazing group of young people. It was very difficult choosing because the level was so high. Because the level changes from year to year.
Yes, we're talking on Lahav Shani,
Yes.
who is now chief conductor at Israel Philharmonic
That's
Orchestra,
right. Yes,
chief
he's
conductor
wonderful.
in Rotterdam, as far as I know.
Yes.
Yes.
Who is first guest conductor of Vienna Symphony Orchestra.
Right.
So his career went through the roof.
Yes, he's also very, very, very wonderful.
Yeah. And I think it has to do with the structure of the competition and with the person of Gustav Mahler. Because I think we are the only conducting competition where the candidates have the full orchestra from the first round. So they come, they start, and they do Mahler, one of his symphonies. And for most of them, it's the first time in their life that they stand in front of a professional orchestra like this, in this quality, with 90 musicians
It's
getting the.
fantastic.
This is what he said. Be excited. I think that's what happens. You know, they come, they are excited, and then you have to show that you get over this excitement and show your professionality. And yeah, and some cannot do this and get out in first round, but some show their talent. And another thing which is very important for our competition is that we don't send candidates home when they leave the competition in the
That's
first
very,
or
very
second or
important.
third round.
Yeah.
They stay in Bamberg. We pay for the hotel and the food until the end of the competition, and everybody has stayed there every year until the end, has talked to jury members. This is very, very important. You get great advice from jurors, from
Yeah.
old conductors on your development. I think it's much more important than just the prize as itself.
Yes, because one can make an error or whatever, but and many of these people stay in touch with us. I know I get a lot of emails from people who have won, but people who have not won, they stay in touch. And they have said the most moving things about it, that it is, they feel it's about the music and about the quality, and they feel that they are truly listened to and made to feel at home, and that it's unlike other competitions. I have had very, very extraordinary, which actually we should publish these letters on the website. I would like to put them on the Mahler Foundation website, because it's because we go on and on, but also this is it's a kind of family of people then afterwards who stay in touch, you know.
Also, what I would like to add is the serious thing. It's called the serious thing. It's called Mahler competition. It's called Mahler competition because there's one big symphony every year in the repertoire, but also because Gustav Mahler has been conductor and composer in this order, I think,
Yes.
during his lifetime. So now we have conductors who also have to cope with modern music. We always have at least one commissioned piece, a world premiere, for the competition, which means music that nobody can listen to YouTube beforehand or get some hints somewhere else. They really have to look in the score and make their own decision what this is, how they could deal with it. We always have a piece of the Viennese school, Schönberg, Berg or Webern.
Yeah.
We always have one piece by Mozart or Haydn, because this is something where you really, really, really need to show that you understand music making with an orchestra. It sounds easy. Mozart especially. We just did with our chief conductor, Jakub Ruscher, we just did Mozart 39, 40 and 41, the three symphonies. And it is so complicated and tough and heavy for the players to get something out of these symphonies that everybody had listened to 100 times, that it gets a meaning. And this is, I think, besides the modern music, the new music, it's the second challenge of this competition. Yes. To show that you can understand what is in this tiny little scores of Haydn or Mozart, which I can make personal and can convince the orchestra to make it happen.
It's very important. In the first year, we had an award specifically for the conductor who conducted best, really, the new pieces. And I think we've been talking about reanimating this. I think it's very important for Mahler always. And then we had, you had the most wonderful, we had an observer last time. I just wanted to mention it because it's a young man from Kenya, from a very, very, very poor village, who sent in a video that he had conducted a concert in front of the Pope. And he came as an observer. He was there at every single rehearsal with the score. And that he really wants to become a conductor. We are inviting him, the Mahler Foundation. Part of the Mahler Foundation is called Mahler and Lewitt, and it's in Spoleto since 2010. We have residencies for all the arts for young people. He's coming in April for a residency, but also a young man, Jorge Villadoms, a young pianist from Mexico, where he also had made a similar thing to El Sistema, made a little foundation in Kenya, and invited him for 3 months to the Geneva Conservatory. So these things are very interconnected, and this is important that we link to other foundations and people who are doing similar things. So I'm very happy that he's coming to us for this month of study.
Mahler for all times and literally for all countries, Kenya, Mexico.
Yes, yes.
You mentioned the Second Viennese School, and Mahler encouraged always Schönberg, Berg, Webern. But throughout his lifetime, he was both. He was feared and he was respected as a relentless perfectionist. And you see that in his scores. After almost every performance, he made revisions until the end of his lifetime. Which consequences occur from this fact that he made so many revisions and was fighting for refinement and perfectionism?
I think it's very important for conductors who follow him and also composers. And it's also very important in relation to the new discoveries, let's say the critical edition. I mean, I feel very strongly that any conductor, any composer, any musicologist, any person who loves Mahler goes really against the spirit of Mahler if you don't go to what has been discovered recently, because it is what Mahler would have done and wanted. You know, he changed so often, and this is the past, and you have to let it go. You can look at it out of interest historically, but if you're going to conduct from it, it really has to be, I feel very strong, it has to be the critical edition, the latest understanding and discovery of scholars about Mahler's music. Otherwise, it's not Mahlerian at all. Not in the spirit of Mahler, if you don't.
So you try to educate the young conductors in this sense?
Very important. I can't imagine a young conductor who would go to an old thing and not go to the latest discovery. It would make him not serious. If you want the truth about Mahler, you have to go to the latest, most critically put together with the scholars who spend their lives doing this. It's for them all important, and it's all important for the future of Mahler, that because there will be perhaps more things discovered. Who knows what will be discovered in the future? And that has to be respected, you know. So
I think it all starts with the score.
Yeah.
You know, also every rehearsal, every opening the score for a conductor means looking what is in the score, and it's not just the notes. It is some tempo advice or some different other advices in there. And I think everything is in the score because the composer wanted it to be here. And the more we get and the more detailed we get the information of what the composer wanted, the better it is for the performance and for the interpretation of the piece. Yeah. And this is, of course, a big thing with Mahler's music, but it's the same for contemporary music. It's the same for Mozart, where you don't have many things in the score, but little tiny things, and you just need to read it and think about it and do it like this, and then you get very close to what the composer wanted.
So would you say when we would reproduce material from the 60s, they are just of historical interest, but not useful for our daily life as
Not
conductors?
for performance today. I think it's historical.
Yes.
You know, I can't imagine any conductor or composer or young conductor who would go back and use that for performance. Not the ones I know.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
Mr. Axt, what is the Pflichtstück in the next competition?
Mahler, Fourth Symphony. Which is, we did this already in one of the previous competitions, but I think it's a very important piece. It's one of the middle symphonies of Gustav Mahler. It shows a lot that you can do with the orchestra. It's just with one singer. This is a practical thing. We can't do Mahler 8 in a competition because we can't afford to hire all those soloists and choruses in order to make it a really...
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day, but not now. And in the jury, we have again the wonderful Barbara Hennigan,
Yes, I
singer,
second that.
conductor,
Amazing
and she
Barbara
will
Hannigan.
perform Mahler 4 in
Yeah,
the fourth
she's-
movement, which is, it's the
It's
most
a joy. We are
fascinating.
really lucky.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have a symphony by Mozart. We have one piece by Alban Berg. This is not yet clear which one, but one of the famous ones. And we have a little bit more modern music. Two pieces by Helmut Lachenmann, who will also join the jury next time. One, his Tableau, which is one of the masterpieces of Helmut Lachenmann for orchestra. It's about 10 minutes, very complicated, very, very dense in his structure. And we will play the Marche Fatale, which Helmut wrote to me and said, please don't tell this is new music. It is not new music. No, and it is not new music. I think we should play good music, irrespectively if it's modern or historic or baroque or classical or romantic or whatever. The choice is having good music and works which can give a challenge to young conductors to work with the orchestra and to show their ability. And we have a new world premiere, a commissioned encore for orchestra by Miroslav Srnka, a Czech composer. And I'm very curious what this will be.
Me too. Yeah, that's very exciting.
I want to add, I witnessed the last competition, and thanks to your help, I was able to hand out to every young conductor this book, Gustav Mahler, the Conductors' Interviews. 29 conductors speak about their relation to Gustav Mahler, about their personal approach. Some of them, like Herbert Blomstedt or Daniel Baumboim, they told me they had first no clue what is Mahler about. They conducted it, but they didn't have, how to say, inner contact with his world. And it's very, and I handed it out, and I met some of the conductors later, and they read it and they said, thanks to Universal Edition, you do a great job. We understand Mahler more and more. Valentin Urjupin, for example, I met him recently in Vienna. So if you want to know more about Mahler, go to the stand 43 in this hall. I want to present you, we are producing a Mahler magazine where we publish new results of scientific research, which is so important as you mentioned before. So if you're eager to know more about our critical editions, please go to stand 43 in this hall. And last but not least, we are producing new conductor scores, critical scores, and by chance and luckily, we are just now in these weeks presenting the new critical edition of Symphony number 4. You will gladly use and bring to the young conductors. And for me as promotion manager, it's crucial to convince these young conductors that it makes a difference which edition they are looking at. And if they want to have insight, then just come to me.
I think you won't have difficulty. It seems so obvious.
I want to add something about the jury as well, because we didn't talk about this in length, which is also a special thing at the Mahler competition in Bamberg. We don't just have conductors in the jury. We have great conductors in the jury, of course. Jakub Ruscha, our chief conductor, will be there. John Carew, one of the old conductors. He was Simon Rattle's teacher.
And Jonathan Knott, who has been with us for years until this next competition.
And next year we will have Juanjo Mena, the Spanish conductor, who is also very deep in Mahler, and Bertrand Dubilly from Vienna. But we have also managers. Orchestra managers, CEOs, intendanten, colleagues of mine. And I think this is also something important, because also Gustav Mahler was an impresario, a manager. He was director of the Vienna Staatsoper. So the point of view of the music industry, of the business, of the audience somehow towards this conducting candidates is very important. It isn't enough just to know how to conduct. You have to convince the orchestra, and you have to convince the audience behind your back. And I think our jury, which has capacities like Deborah Border, who is now president of the New York Philharmonic, Ara Guselemian, the dean of Juilliard School in New York, Martin Campbell White, one of the old, grand old artists and conductors, managers in London. These are people who give all their experience of 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the business in order to find the new conductors of the future in Bamberg.
And composers.
And composers. I mentioned Lachenmann already, yes.
But you told me almost 500 young conductors apply with videotapes. Who has time to look after it? Tell us about the procedure.
Oh, that's really hard. I think it's the hardest part for the jury. We have a small jury to watch these videos, and it takes 3 or 4 days in order to go through all of them several times. And the first round is, well, it's more or less easy, because there is some videos where you really just need 10 or 20 seconds and you see, that's interesting, keep it in, or that's nothing. And then we reduce from about 500 candidates to 50 or 60, 10%. And then it gets complicated, because those 10% are really, really interesting conductors from the video point of view, which means the material that they send to us for application. But we have to reduce, and we have to invite 12 or 14 candidates then. And this is really, really hard work, because you have to look very, very precisely what are they doing, what kind of video is it, what kind of orchestra is it, what they are conducting. Is this an amateur orchestra? Is it a professional orchestra? Is it a professional video, which is more and more now, because it's easier, it's not so expensive to do recordings, video recordings. Is the video in one piece, or is it cut? If it's cut, what is cut out? Is it, maybe it's a complicated part of the score which is not in the, we had things like this, you know. So you need to be very, very careful, also because it's a great responsibility to choose candidates for this competition with this renommee.
For me, it was two things were very interesting. First of all, technically, the young conductors are on an incredibly high level. I did not expect this. Last time was Mahler 3. You have really the first movement, which lasts 30 minutes, the longest of all Mahler movements. You have to keep it together. Technically, they knew how to do it. But I want to talk about the spirit of Mahler and come to the Mahler Foundation. Mahler is more than just executing the notes. You have to discover, and it's not so easy for conductors in the early 30s to look what is behind. And I think this is one of your major projects now to broaden the perspective on Mahler. It's not just having a good performance, but to transport and to transmit what is behind Mahler. And this was one of the reasons why you founded the Mahler Foundation.
Yes, I
about.
did. I thought it's, first of all, we live in very challenging times altogether. Whether it's about the planet, it's politically, humanly, socially. And my feeling has been that I wanted to go what we call beyond Mahler, Mahler beyond, meaning reaching out. Now we have these amazing technical possibilities of streaming, and so to reach out to a wider audience. I know a lot of the people who run concert halls, they complain that they have only audience 50 years old and up. This is a terrible thing, and one has to reach out to young people in new ways. First of all, there is very little money. The money is owned now by 1%. So you have many young people who can't afford. They simply don't afford because they can go on to YouTube or streaming or whatever. They don't afford to go to concert halls. And so it's going to die out. It's important to take Mahler's music into new spaces, outdoors in stadiums, in places. A little bit, well, we have to take the example of rock music, I'm afraid, because this is what brings young people together. And years and years ago, Simon Rattle did Mahler 5 in France, in the south of France, in front of the Mont Saint-Victoire, outdoors, not being upset about the acoustic, but 10,000 people were in the audience, sitting on the grass. This is something that is important to learn from young people and for young people. And so I would like to go beyond, if you like, even the classical music framework, and ask conductors and orchestras and youth orchestras to work with us on this. The next thing we are making is something we call the Mahler Forum, but we want to challenge, we want to invite people to come together. Our first Mahler Forum will be in Amsterdam in 2020, the Mahler's Universe. And as a foundation, we are working together very closely with the Het Concertgebouw, with Simon Reinig and the people who work with him, to widen the scope of the Mahler Festival, to take it beyond what is in the concert hall. So we will have our first Mahler Forum with a very wide group of people. I'm reaching out to very contrasting people. We will have that. But we will have a Mahler Award with many things. But that is a beginning, and then we hope to have a center in Vienna. This is what we now, we have a default place of Vienna for our foundation meetings in the Oper, because Dominique Mahler has become our latest board member, and is very helpful. So it's very important for us, young people, it's very important for us. Mahler considered himself the singer of nature. What would he think now when you have a little girl of 16 years old in Sweden coming into the streets and bringing with her hundreds and thousands of young children? Why? Because the grown-ups have abandoned and abdicated responsibility for the planet we live in, which seems extraordinary, and I find it terrifying. And I think the word she used, we want you to panic, is quite right. So our first Mahler Forum would be Das Lied von der Erde, and we will be bringing people, I won't say now who, but to discuss this, and we will stream it as much as possible worldwide. I want to take advantage of the streaming possibilities and the reaching worldwide and reaching to China and reaching to every continent, to young people. So we have something called Project Infinitude, which we will elaborate later. This is something I did personally with Kachun Wong, who was our last winner in the Mahler competition in Bamberg. And I helped him. We did 4 months with underprivileged children in Singapore because it would be the beginning of something in Asia, so which he is now carrying on. And so my wish is to link all the Mahler institutions and organizations and societies worldwide so that we can mobilize to be a force for something decent and good, and it's needed today because we are going in very difficult directions. So I feel this is something I feel very strongly. And I can't imagine what Mahler would have imagined, that a whale would die having eaten 40 kilos of plastic. We know about the islands, the biggest continents of plastic. All of this is very related to the fact of poverty in the world today, of an abdication of responsibility from societies in every country. And I think one needs some reminding. And art and music can do this in a very imaginative and powerful way. And this is, I think, I really believe in this very strongly. So I'm reaching out to friends and Mahler friends worldwide. I'm now going to Paris, first to Amsterdam for meetings there, but then to Paris for meetings with all the people to do with the Mediathèque, Mahler, and there is a new Mahler Société being formed in Paris for France. It hasn't been there before, and also in China. And they've asked me to be honorary president, which is very exciting, because I think of it as this is my parallel life. I have my private life, and I have this which you asked about burden in the beginning. It is not a burden, it is a huge responsibility, being the granddaughter of Gustav Mahler on every level. And so I feel as these things are possible, I can't not try to do them. And I will reach out to as many people as I know and don't know to help me.
And it seems to be big joy as well. It
Yes.
seems to be big joy as well.
Yes, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Gives hope. Gives hope.
We have been talking yesterday, if you want to worship Mahler in Vienna, you have to go to the cemetery. But there is no place in the city.
There is something very wonderful. I've been meeting with the former president of Austria and the present president of Austria and the new mayor. I was very impressed by all of them. And I have a gift that I will be bringing to Vienna, as well as asking from Vienna some concrete help. But I don't know whether I should bring it up yet. It's not happened yet. But one of the great artists of our time has offered, if Vienna will reach out formally, to make this Denkmal, which has never existed in Austria for Mahler, never, to make it a reality, and also he will find all the money to come behind it. And this is something very important, and this I can say is Anish Kapoor who has made this offer, and he made it to me directly, saying that Das Lied is one of his favorite. It is a huge generosity, but this is what I call the Mahler effect. It is astounding what people would like to give in relation to Mahler. So let's bring all this energy together and let it happen. We need it. We need it, and then we can sustain all these wonderful children who are, in the streets every Friday, the world over, walking and marching for the planet, because they see clearly, and I don't know why all of our politicians are so slow and actually irresponsible about all this. I mean, Van der Bellen is from the Green Party. I told him this when we met.
And his support, as far as I know, he is going to support you.
He's wonderful. I think he's quite wonderful. Anyway, we will reach out to all like-minded people, and there are many, many, many. It just so if we can do this and make a network of people, it can be really powerful.
You mentioned Simon Rattle. He told me in this interview book, we tend to forget how off-center Mahler was in the 60s when he was a young student.
Yes.
orchestra musicians they struggled with the scores of Mahler. I want to ask you at the end, why did it change? Why did it become Mahler so popular? Lorin Marcel said he felt that there is a tsunami in the making, and this is what you find in his music. Nowadays, when I listen closely to you, there is a tsunami in the making too.
Yes, now. Yeah.
Why did it become Mahler so popular?
Well, I think it has to do with the reception of music in history at all. Because music has a certain delay, compositions. That is what I think. And you know, this of Mahler who said, "My time will come." And I think now the time has come, because now we have this this discontinuity that you have in his music. We have it in everyday's life. We have it in our private lives. We have it in, if you look outside, if you look at politics, if you look at society and so on. You have this marching bands, this different tempi, different sound worlds at the same time everywhere, even here in this.
This is very Mahlerian, actually.
In this surroundings, it's very Mahlerian to have some tango guitar music here, and people. You know, if you watch a picture, contemporary art is much more appreciated by the mass of people, because you watch it, you don't need to stay there for 45 minutes together with 2,000 other people. You watch it, and if you don't like it, you go 20 seconds later, you go away. If you listen to music, you have to go through this. And I think we are now in the status where Gustav Mahler's music is something everybody of us is feeling in his inside. So that's it. And also, maybe this comes later with Schönberg in 30 or 40 years, and with Webern and Berg. I don't know. You know, now the first pieces by Ligeti start being popular now, and of course there's also a certain delay of 50 years for this.
Yes.
It's very interesting.
And there are young composers today, very interesting, who maybe in 20 years, 40, we don't know. It's all keeps going on, and people who say, you know, music is dead or opera is dead, nothing is ever dead. It's always in a state of renewal. This is the wonderful thing, a state of transformation, which is about Mahler, is about transformation, I feel.
I have two last questions to both of you. In this Conductors Mahler interview book, I pretended to be naive on purpose and asked every conductor, what did Mahler want? And they were stunned by the questions, and the answers are incredible. What did Mahler want?
Well,
related to our times.
Related to our times.
To every time.
He wanted. We know he wanted to create a world in a symphony. And this is what I think is crucial when I listen to Mahler. That you have this piece, and in that piece there's like a novel of 1,200 pages or so. You know, when I'm reading books, when I'm reading literature, I'm always looking for authors, for stories that surprise me. Something where I don't like books where you read 100 pages and you know exactly what will happen or not happen during the next 200 or 300 pages. But I like these authors where you read and you be surprised every second page. And this is what Mahler does with his symphonies. Creating a complete world. And the world is colorful, is diverse, is huge. That would be my answer on this.
I mean, it just came to me now. It's a little bit strong to say it. I mean, he wanted to include the world. His embrace was without end. It was limitless. But I think he always also wanted to save it. There is something about him which is in this vein. I had the feeling that, I mean, as he said, you know, while one unhappy person exists, one cannot rest, because it is important, this aspect of Mahler, that he really couldn't bear the unhappiness or cruelty, or it was difficult for him, and I think he wanted to include it, because I think every one of his symphonies contains everything, but also this amazing infinity and hope. I mean, for me, the Sixth Symphony, everybody calls tragic, is about the other world. It's otherworldly. His music is also about world and other world, in a very wide and broad sense. So I basically think he really wanted to save the world. I mean, from itself, to save, in a personal sense, his own salvation, but I think it's somehow was very strong in him.
These are very wise and personal and touching words. Thank you so much, Marina Mahler, that you came to Frankfurt, that you talked to us. Thank you very much, Markus Axt, for joining us. Looking forward to see you both in Bamberg next year at the competition, and thank you for listening to us.